Check 1 2 1 2. What's up, everybody? DJ Divine Justice here, aka DJ Button Down, bringing you a dope tutorial on my mapping for the Pioneer DJM-T1 for Tractor. When it first came out, it was mainly for the sample decks, so remix decks weren't invented yet. So I made a mapping for being able to toggle between the using Check 1 2 1 2. What's up, everybody? DJ Divine Justice here, aka DJ Button Down, bringing you my mapping for the Pioneer DJM-T1 mixer and controller for Tractor. When this first came out, it was really good. It was right around when the sample decks were introduced, so this is before the remix decks, and then after that they came out with an update for you to use it in internal or external mode. If you're a scratch DJ, you're definitely going to want it in external mode, so therefore it's not the crossfader that's built into the software itself, because then you'll have a certain amount of latency and the sound is just different. Basically, I kind of just went over the mapping that was already there and then added functionality kind of for more of a 4-deck kind of mode. So starting from the top, in the load buttons, instead of the shift functionality duplicating, it will load to deck C and D. And you'll see that I have a remix deck over here. So if I go to, since I'm already in regular tracks, load to deck D, it changes it to a track deck and loads it to deck D. I also switched it so that when you're in, we'll say, sampler mode on both sides, that corresponds to the cue points. And you can see that this one's on 5 and 6, so I can go there, delete 5, go back to the original mode, and you'll see that this track as well as that one, C and D, both have one cue point. I'll open these up. And then you can use shift as normal to delete them. Another functionality that I put on all 4 decks as far as cue points go back to, say, the first cue point. Shift will delete the first cue point, but if you don't have a first cue point and you still are holding shift and hit the first cue point, it will set a beat marker or a grid marker there. And if you have in the settings grid markers as a hot cue, then basically you have a nice double duty of having your first cue and having your grid set, because you'll know that if you press shift and delete, it's not based on the grid anymore, because there is no grid. It's based on the transient markers. So again, shift, and that works on all the channels. I go back. If I were to just delete it and set a first cue point, I'm stuck in shift mode. Delete it, it would just set a regular cue point. But with shift, delete, and holding down shift still and pressing the first cue point, and since it's the same track, it doubled up, there's one cue point with the grid marker. The other thing is that instead of you just having play for A and B and then the shift functionality changing it to relative mode, I just had B so that shift is play for C and D. A and B, C and D, and it lights up to show you, and it has cue functionality just the way that track A and B have cue and shift functionality. Right below that is the effects and assign for 1 and 2. The shift functionality used to be bend. I switched that to effects 1 and 2 for channel C and D. And same idea with the sync buttons. The shift functionality was to designate A or B as the master. I, again with the idea of using it in 4 deck mode, made these sync for C and D, and then sync for A and B when I turn them all off, A and B, C and D. In what I'm considering deck mode for A and B, this knob will, as a rotary encoder, you can choose the size of the loop, and then as a push encoder, you're actually setting the loop. So you can see that's playing, it'll stay in that loop, you can make the loop smaller, come out of the loop. When you're in shift mode, this works as a filter. And then when you push down on the encoder, it resets the filter to 12 o'clock or 0%. So I'll stop that track. Go over here and load a couple of remix decks. So I can go to the remix set, and let's throw the drums. Load a remix set, and then let's also throw this one on. Now I'll press shift, load that to C, and then now I'm over in remix deck mode. When sampler mode, remix decks mode, same thing. When you're in that mode, this knob again, the idea is from A to B and then C and D. This will control the gain, because if you're in external mode and I mapped it to track volume, it wouldn't matter because you're not able to control the track volumes, because the track volumes and the crossfader are just for when it's in internal mode. So instead I map this for the gain of that track, and then as normal, if you press shift, you can actually control the volume of all 4 tracks. And if you get into the triple shift mode, you can control one at a time by, you can see it's triple shift mode because it's blinking, and then I can hold down, this will now controlling the second one, and I'm holding it down and turning the knob to control the volumes of the individual slots. So there's normal mode, shift mode, and then triple shift, which brings you to another page of MIDI assignment. Everything is flashing because it hasn't been selected yet. Over here, just have some one-shots. And this is in the first mode, which is muting and unmuting the channel. So for instance, if I was playing loops, it'll mute it and let you know that there's a sample there, but it's muted. Launch these two. Again, I can mute them, go back in. Unmute it, that's basically how this first mode is set to function. Then if you press activate, it pretty much is basically starting the loop over, triggering the loop without muting it. So the way that that's helpful over in the one-shots is that you switch into this mode and you can play the one-shots out. The mapping that I made for these are that then when you're in shift mode, and you'll see the page is changing, that you can cycle through whatever sounds you have. I like that snare, I like that hi-hat. That's okay. Once I'm out of shift mode, then it's still just in this trigger mode. And it would work the same way in this mode, where when you're in shift, it'll go down to the next clip that's playing. So basically the idea is that instead of you just being able to trigger one sound at a time, and you can either hold down shift and press it like that, or you can double click and go into shift and trigger it that way. And you can hear that then this has just changed because it's moved down to the next clip down. Basically, most of the pre-made remix decks are kind of meant to work that way, so that if you launch everything that's playing in a row, that's going to kind of sound good together. Go back to this mode. When shift isn't on, mute different parts, bring them back in, and then when I'm ready to move on to a different set of combinations, and you see all three of these have moved, but this one stayed the same because I didn't trigger it. That's on the third, second, and second one. So if I want them all to play, then I just have to hit these two to have them catch up when shift mode is on. And everything's sequenced because over here I have it at 4, so every 4 bars, and since the light is on, it's quantized, so every 4 bars it'll update and switch to the next sample. And you want to be in trigger mode, and that's how you can shift and put the next sample down. This one, since it's flashing, still muted. Right on time. Word up. So this has been my custom mapping for the Pioneer DJM-T1. Once again, I'm DJ Divine Justice. As always, practice and enjoy. Peace.